Hi, welcome to the channel. Please like and subscribe. I'm Cynthia Schiller, and today we're talking about enmeshment. What exactly is it? How does it relate to narcissism? So it's a very parasitic type of relationship. The parent becomes a parasite and they are feeding off their child. It's kind of like living vicariously sometimes through the child, their mind is overpowered, controlled into believing into that their only reason for existence is to serve the parent. In a healthy relationship, it's pretty much unconditional love to the child. The child is allowed to explore and feel safe and comforted and guided. But in enmeshment, it's a situation where this child is just serving the parent, and they have a pressure of trying to anticipate whatever it is a parent needs. And that's a lot to put on a child. So the parent, they're not really concerned with the needs of the child for the most part. So while they may take care of the basic needs such as food, clothing, taking them to school, it's more self-serving for the parent because they don't want to look like a bad parent. So they do what they're supposed to do. They keep the child alive. Also, it's their supply. Might as well keep it around. So when this child grows up inside a home like this, it causes a lot of stress. There's also when a child grows up where one of the parents is enmeshed with the child, they don't really have a true identity of themselves as they grow up because they were just serving the parent and their identity is underdeveloped or stifled, and they're often confused about who they really are inside. So the child becomes feeling dependent, responsible for the parents' well-being, the parents' emotional state, and often takes on the roles of the emotional caretaker of their parent when it should be the other way around. And within this type of environment, the child has a really hard time developing their self-esteem, their sense of self. So they're basically being trained by the parent to serve the needs of the parent. And they're losing their developmental time. So whenever the parent feels upset, the child thinks that it's their responsibility to make it better. They often feel guilty, compelled to figure out what exactly is going on with the parent, how to make it better. So the child becomes the caretaker. And it's putting the child into the wrong situation too early. So this child grows up having an inability to self-regulate, to have personal identity, because their vantage point were defined from an outside source. So now they don't know how to develop their own ideas. And they're just kind of lost. They have to figure how to find their way through society. And the parent didn't take the time to teach this child how to navigate their own way because the parent was always too preoccupied with themselves and getting the child to serve their needs that the child's needs were neglected. So this enmeshment, the child has permeable boundaries, dysfunction. They don't know how to have healthy boundaries that they need in their lives to live well within the world. So most likely they become victims to predatory types of individuals because they don't know how to value themselves, how to protect themselves and maintain their personal space, their personal boundaries, because they haven't really set those because that was always given to them. They didn't go through the struggles they needed to learn. And a lot of damage continues to grow if they have, let's say, a narcissistic parent. They begin to believe and are taught that love is conditional. And that's why they start walking on eggshells because they feel that their worth is constantly being compromised. So that's their sense of love. And they tippy toe around it, pleasing somebody else. So, um, you know, oh, I can't move this. It always does this on me. But enmeshment, you know, it it's where it's important for the children to value themselves. And as they get older, they need to learn to value themselves. Because the children who have narcissistic parents, they don't have the self-esteem or the learning that should have taken place to value themselves. Because the child was objectified and caused to feel like they didn't have a true sense of worth unless they were doing something, unless they were pleasing or figuring out problems. So they felt pretty much doomed to have this low opinion of themselves. So to start healing this, it needs to be where we need to start treating ourselves different than the parents. If you had a narcissistic parent, we have to treat ourselves differently. We have to be kind to ourselves, learn to give ourselves some patience, some grace. And one thing is really important is not to have negative self-talk. Like, I'm a loser, I can't do this, or I always fail, nobody wants me. Got to refocus and practice mindfulness. So it's hard for people. They need to reparent themselves to kind of fill that void, to kind of bring themselves up to where they should be, and to learn that's, things happen and we can learn from it, to bring healing to the inner child that we all have. We all have ups and downs in our lives. So it's really important to self-soothe. And when you grow up with a parent that teaches you to be responsible for the parents, it's hard to know how to be there for yourselves, because that child was always serving others. So it's important to find ways to nurture ourselves, to start feeling emotionally competent, functional. And it's hard. Some things, eating the right foods, exercise, maybe some meditation or yoga might help. Definitely enough sleep. And, with narcissistic parents, the child is most likely affected, and just going through a lot of guilt about not being enough, because the parent was still upset about things. And I wish I could minimize this. I'm going to have to add the next part into a different video. But enmeshment is unhealthy because the sole purpose is the child. Unreasonable expectations. Sometimes it's where let's say the parent wanted to be a cheerleader, they're putting that onto the child because that makes the parent proud, because they didn't have the pride as being possibly a cheerleader, football player, whatever it was, actor. And they're putting unreasonable demands on the child. So the child isn't developing what they don't even know what they like to do. So it can be really toxic. It's brought into their adulthood and they just don't have the right coping skills. They have more triggers. Maybe they finally get out in the world and feel a release to where, they were taught to be the soother. Sometimes they are looking for that parent that they didn't have as a child. So it's like reverse. And so they're taking from the new supply, or possibly you when you were with them. They wanted a mother figure, a father figure. But once they got it, it wasn't what they were used to. So they flipped the table and it's just toxic. And that is what enmeshment is. So I hope that helps, explains a couple things for you. Topic requests are always welcome. One-on-ones are available. And share some of your stories. It helps validate people so others can see that they weren't alone. I do a lot of videos based on topics that you guys comment on or questions. So I'd love to hear what you have to say. Do you know a narcissistic parent? Were you raised by one? And how did that go? What are some things that you've learned? Any other questions you have?